You can hear me now? Perfect. Let's see if... Come on. Yeah. Alright, it was the right one. Sorry about that. You know what? I can actually move it up here. That way you won't have to get too confused. That way you won't get confused when I look at the camera and... I'm brushing my hair too much. It's getting all oily. I'm showering before I go to bed. Because what the fuck not? Because I'm such a lazy person, I still haven't figured out the sound. Like listening to music while I'm reading. So, well, it's not too floofy anymore. I like it when it's floofy. But yeah. Yeah. I apologize for like all the messing around at the beginning. But yeah. We're gonna be reading chapters 6 to 10 today. I don't know if you can hear my sister. I don't know if you can. But let's see. I'm just checking how many chapters there are in total. So I'm getting a rough estimate of how many streams there's going to be of this book. I think that's the 28. Alright, so 6 streams. There'll be 6 streams. So we'll finish it off in a week. Tuesday next week. Yeah. It's 6. Someone's doing something outside. Oh, wait, I think my older brother's actually got home now. Yeah, that's him. In about a month, it'll be still light at this hour. There'll still be sunlight at this hour. It's like 9 p.m. So. Yeah, I'm hoping I can like get into the city to like buy stuff for Bones for their B-Day box I'm putting together for them, and that at the same time I'll be able to like buy some cheap lighting to use for my streams, because this doesn't look too good in my opinion. But that's just my opinion. But yeah, I'm a bit subdued today because I don't think I haven't drunk enough water today. So I don't got a lot of energy right now. And my older sister's in the other room. And my brain automatically goes to oh, this is awkward. I don't like her listening to me, but what can I do about it? She didn't work today, and she'll be working the rest of the week. But that's not really hello. Yeah, that's not really closing shift. I dropped the book. You can see the shadow of my chair. I just realized. Right there. Not much, really. Just being awkward as always. I need to find. Oh, wow. Part 1 is not long. It's usually one of the longer parts of. It's been one of the longer parts of the 3 previous books, but this time, part 1 is very short. And the other 2 are big chunks, whereas it's the other way around, really, in the other books. I have not watched that, so good for them. Alex vaped. Don't know who that is. Sorry. Or if that's good or bad, or. I hope you got your water, Ron. Because I forgot, and then I had to start the stream and then go downstairs to get my water. But yeah. I hope you've at least been drinking enough water today. But you have been drinking water today during the day, right? The better. Got my eye on you. Okay, that fair enough. That's okay. That's okay. I forgot to drink water today. Well, I drank, I think, half a liter at least. But compared to the last few days, I didn't drink nearly enough. So I'm low energy today. Yeah. The chapters are quite longer. Are somewhat longer than the other 3 books we've read so far. So like the stream yesterday was like 2.5 hours because of the long chapters. So I don't know how long the stream will be going on for. It could be like an hour and a half, could be 2 hours and a half. Who knows? But yeah, 15 minutes in. Now we're starting to read. Chapter 6. Starflight was lucky his stomach was empty. It heaved perilously, and he had to cover his eyes and take a few deep breaths before he could speak again. The Rainwing was the sad grey color of the chains that had bound Starflight in the Sky Kingdom, the first time he'd been separated from Sunny. She drooped against the wall, her wings outstretched and secured in place. When he was able to look again, he saw what he thought he saw that what he thought were pins were actually clamps, holding her where she was, but not going straight through her wings as he thought first. Not that anything about this is all right. What are you doing to her? Fate Speaker cried. She bolted into the room and lifted the rainwing snout gently in her talons. The trapped dragon barely responded. This one is stunned for the day, Mastermind said. We were testing to see whether they run out of venom at some point, if they shoot it for long enough, but she fainted before we could get any really useful data. She needs water, Fate Speaker said, glancing around the room, then looking straight at Starflight. He hesitated, remembering Fjord and Crocodile again. If this dragon did suddenly spray venom at them, he wouldn't blame her, but he didn't want to be in the way when it happened. Starflight, Fate Speaker said, and the tone of her voice reminded him again so much of Sunny that he couldn't say no to her. I'll get some. He flew to one of the pipes of the desalination. I'm never going to be able to say that word correctly. Desalination machine, where he'd seen a faucet earlier, found an empty cauldron that smelled clean, and filled it up. Fate Speaker had one of the prisoner's wings unclamped by the time Starflight got back. Mastermind stood in the doorway, watching through the holes in his helmet, but neither interfering nor helping. It was hard to know that he was thinking what his face completely hidden. It was hard to know what he was thinking with his face completely hidden. Starflight brushed past him and set the cauldron down, then unclamped the dragon's other wing. She slumped forward so suddenly that both Fate Speaker and Starflight were nearly knocked over, but they managed to catch her and lean her wings over their shoulders. Fate Speaker held the cauldron up, and the rainwing revived enough to drink a little. What's your name? Starflight asked her. She coughed and looked sideways at him. No Nightwing has ever asked my name before, she whispered hoarsely. It's Orchid. Oh! Starflight gasped, then closed his mouth quickly and glanced at the door. Mastermind was leaning into the hallway, yelling. Strong winds! Strong winds, you blockhead! Get up here! Mangrove is looking for you, Starflight whispered hurriedly. He hasn't given up. He'll be here to rescue you soon. Fate Speaker stared at him as if he'd just peeled off his scales and revealed a hippo underneath. But Orchid lifted her head, her eyes flooding with hope. A shimmering rose pink spread over her, starting on her chest and drifting out to her wingtips. Soon, she said softly, then I can hang on until he comes. I hope it'll be soon, Starflight thought. I hope he doesn't die on his way here. I hope Glory survives too. I hope my friends are planning to rescue me as well. Fate Speaker's expression was 10 kinds of confusion. She tilted her head as if she was listening, and Starflight realized with a jolt of panic that he'd been having several unguarded thoughts since they had started this point of their tour. He'd forgotten. How could I forget? To worry about having his mind read. But his father hadn't reacted to any of his thoughts. Mastermind looked as pleased as ever. Not a mind reader, then, perhaps. Maybe those kinds of powers aren't genetically dormant in us. Maybe it is enough just to be smart like him. He'd always thought all Nightwings could read minds and all Nightwings could see the future. That's what it sounded like in the scrolls he'd read, but Glory thought maybe it was only some of them, and perhaps she was right. Maybe I'm not completely defective. 3 moons! Mastermind barked from the doorway. How did you turn her that pink color? I've never seen any of them look like that before. That's because it's the color of happiness, and there's no happiness on this twisted island. Starflight is thinking this. Starflight met Fate Speaker's eyes. I think she's just grateful for the water, Fate Speaker said, blinking at him. You didn't have to read minds to guess what she was thinking. We'll be talking about this later. Fascinating. Mastermind came over and prodded the scales on Orchid's neck with one claw. She closed her eyes. Her color didn't change. Utterly fascinating. A burly nightwing slouched grumpily in from the balcony. Half a lizard hung from one corner of his mouth, and his shoulders were almost too wide for his wings to fit through the door. What? He mumbled, chewing. This one can go back, said Mastermind. Oh, and Strong Winds, guess what? This is my son! He waved gleefully at Starflight. Starflight wished he could go back to half an hour in time when he'd been just as happy about those words as Mastermind was. Strong Winds gave Starflight a dubious look. Huh, he said. All right, when do I get a helmet like that? He nodded at the thing on Mastermind's head. This is just a prototype, Mastermind said. He turned to Starflight. As you can imagine, the hardest part is creating venom-resistant armor. Of creating... As you can imagine, the hardest part of creating venom-resistant armor is coming up with a solution that protects the eyes, but still allows one to see. I'd love to hear your thoughts, because I must admit, I'm stymied. Is that right? This is a thoroughly imperfect solution. He tapped on the helmet with his talons. Peripheral vision is negligible. Why am I having such trouble saying that word? It's negligible at best, and of course, venom could still splash through the holes if one were unlucky. He shook his head. There must be a more ingenious approach. Like safety goggles in our labs. That way you don't get anything in the eyes. Whatever. Strong Winds grumped. Where's her band? Mastermind waved at the corner, and the muscular Nightwing picked up a heap of metal and one of the spears. He brought it over and fitted a kind of muzzle around Orchid's mouth, twisting the lock into place with a practiced flick of the spear tips. Then he shooed Starflight and Fate Speaker aside, snapped a chain around the Rainwing's neck, and gave it a yank. Without protesting, Orchid followed him out of the room. But why are you doing this? Starflight blurted. Why study the venom at all? Mastermind pulled off the helmet and gave him a confused look. It's science! We're expanding dragon knowledge! There's gotta be more to it than that, Starflight said. Why is it so important? Why do you need venom-resistant armor? The Rainwings should never have bothered you if you left them. Would never have bothered you if you left them alone. His father shrugged. The Queen has her reasons. I have mine. I don't get involved in her plans. For me, scientific discovery is reason enough. Starflight looked at the clamps on the wall, then down to the floor, too sickened to ask any more questions. Well, I wish I had more time to show you more, Mastermind said, setting his helmet up on a shelf. But my daily scheduled meeting with the Queen is upon me. Do you get to see her? Starflight asked. No, said Mastermind. 3 moons, no. No one sees the Queen. Not for the last 9 years or so. She's very private. Really, Starflight thought. I wish I had more progress to report. I wish I had some more progress to report, Mastermind mused. But telling her about you will certainly be a triumph. Come back tomorrow and we can get to know each other better, yes? He wrapped his wings around Starflight and hugged him, not waiting for an answer. It was fantastic to meet you, son. I am so very proud. He ushered them out of the door and locked it, then slid away toward the tunnel at the far end of the balcony. Starflight glanced along the row of doors, imagining tortured Rainwings behind each one. Wow, Fate Speaker said. So, turns out we might be horrible. I did not foresee that at all. Starflight sat down, his shoulders slumping. everything I read about Nightwings being so noble and brilliant and perfect. I can't understand this.
So where have you been? She asked curiously. You're not like them. And who's Mangrove?
I was raised by the talents of peace too, he said, hoping he could avoid the mangrove question by distracting her. Actually, I'm the one in the prophecy, or I was. I guess I'm expendable since they're replacing me with you.
What? She took a step back, fluttering her wings. Wait, I never saw you. I lived right in the talons of Peace Camp.
We were kept hidden, Starlight explained, under a mountain. No one was supposed to find us. There you are.
Marozia landed beside them with a thump.
If you're quite finished with your little chat, there are other pressing matters we could attend to.
I'm not finished,
Fate Speaker said, whirling toward him.
He's all special and chosen too. How can we both be in the prophecy?
Only one of you will be, said Marozia, but that's why you're both here, so that we can decide which one. So there's still a chance, Starlight said. Thought, not said. Thought.
Don't you know? Didn't you deliver that prophecy?
Fate Speaker asked, wrinkling her nose. Prophecies can be complicated, Marozia said coldly.
Ooh, Fate Speaker said. Get combat. I should write that down and use it on Viper.
The real problem, Marozia went on, is that neither of you are suitable candidates whatsoever. But we have no other dragonets of the right age we could use. So it must be one of you, he growled. We apparently made a grave error allowing you to be raised outside the tribe, where we thought you'd be safe from. Well, just in case. It has always been our assumption that Nightwing superiority is something every Nightwing is hatched with. He looked down his nose at the two dragonets. Evidently, we were wrong. But why aren't I suitable? Starlight asked. He hated the plaintive tone in his voice, but he couldn't seem to quash it. What have I done? You have no leadership qualities, Marozia said. You make Nightwings look like cowards and followers. And you antagonized our ally. Blister? Starlight said, uncomfortably remembering his interaction with her in the Kingdom of Sea. He tried to find a reason to support her as the next Sandwing Queen. Really, he tried. But she was too manipulative and too untrustworthy. And he didn't like the way she looked at Sunny, as if the little dragonette would make an excellent snack. You have placed our whole plan in jeopardy, Marozia said. What plan? Starlight cried. How am I supposed to make anything happen when I don't even know what you really want? To his surprise, Marozia actually paused and thought about that. No, he finally rumbled. Dragonets can't be trusted with secrets. Perhaps if you are the chosen one, we can reveal more. But all you should really need to know is how to follow orders. He scowled. Now come. Marozia swept this away, lashing his tail. Starlight and Fate Speaker exchanged glances. Have your visions given you any hints? Starlight asked. About whatever their secret plan is, I mean. She scratched her neck, the anklet of silver scales glittering as she moved.
Let me think. She closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them again. Oh, absolutely. It involves us. But both of us. And we're going to be heroes, and the whole tribe will help us stop the war. Maybe they'll even make us king and queen.
Startled, he blinked at her. King and queen? But she wasn't Sunny. And he'd been in love with one dragon his whole life. Oh, it's so adorable! Sorry. Move now, or I will kill you both, prophecy or no prophecy, Marozia bellowed from the tunnel. The dragonets scrambled up and hurried after him, tripping over each other. Fate Speaker bounded into the lead, and Starlight was left trailing behind, his mind a world of confusion.
He didn't want to think about a possible future as fate because king. And he focused on his father's experiments instead. Why are they torturing the rainwings? I can't figure this out. Think, Starlight, think. His first guess was that Nightwings wanted to use rainwing venom themselves. As Vengeance had said, it was one of the most powerful weapons in Pyria. And if they could somehow replicate the venom or adapt it for their own purpose, that, plus their telepathy and precognition, would make the Nightwings unstoppable. Maybe their secret plan involved joining the war once they had this new kind of weapon for themselves. Starlight already knew they'd chosen a side, Blisters. Although why her and why they were thinking of fighting the war now, 18 years into it, he couldn't figure out. Perhaps Blister had promised them something, the way Blaze was giving up territory to the Ice Wings in exchange for their help. Territory! Starlight stopped in the middle of the rocky tunnel as understanding flooded over him. That's what they need. More than anything, the Nightwings need a new home. The volcano was extremely dangerous. Maybe it had been dormant when the tribe moved here, but it certainly wasn't anymore. The Nightwings were living under its threat every day. And the island was a horrible place to live. They must be running out of prey, with hardly any fresh water to drink, no view of the sky through the thick cloud cover, and nowhere to go except through the tunnel to the rainforest. The rainforest, which was the opposite of here, of the perfect place to live. That's their plan. Starlight clutched his head. Why hadn't he figured it out sooner? The Nightwings weren't trying to reproduce the venom. Mastermind's experiments were all about how to defend against it, because the Nightwings were planning to invade the rainforest and steal it from the Rainwings. But they were afraid of the Rainwings fighting back. Even the famously peaceful tribe would surely have to defend their home. Sorry. I think there's a mouse or something scrambling around over there. So the Nightwings were figuring out how to protect themselves from Rainwing venom in preparation for the day when they stormed into the rainforest and took it over for themselves. Is that what Blister had promised them? The tunnel from the rainforest to the Kingdom of Sand. That's for a Sandwing army once she's queen, so they can come through and help the Nightwings fight the Rainwings if need be. The Rainwings were in awful danger. This wasn't a matter of a few dragons disappearing here or there. Glory was right, and Queen Magnificent was wrong. They have to fight back, or soon they'll all be dead. And I'm the only one who knows. But he was just Starlight, the weakest, most cowardly dragon ever chosen for a prophecy. How could he save the Rainwings? How could he stop his own tribe from destroying them? Fate Speaker came charging back down the tunnel. I keep thinking he can't get any more grumpy, and then he does, she said. Come on, hurry up. He says you have to meet the others, in case you're the dragonette in the prophecy instead of me. She waved her talons in front of his face. Wake up, dreamy face. Starlight shook himself as hard as he could. Coming, he said, although he felt like he could barely string words together. Maybe I'm wrong, but he knew he wasn't. All the pieces fit together too well. I figured out the Nightwing's secret plan, he thought, but now what do I do about it? End of chapter 6 and end of part 1. Now we move on to part 2, the Queen's Secret. Ooh. Hydration is key. I'm not gonna let my throat go dry like yesterday, because I barely had any water in my bottle yesterday, which ended up hurting and
me coughing a lot because of my throat being dry from talking so much. Talking for like 2.5 hours.
Anyway,
Well, we're 6 chapters in and we already know what they're really planning. Well, hopefully, Starflight deduced correctly. I mean, he is a really smart cookie. And I'm not being sarcastic or anything. He is a really smart dragon. Like I said in the beginning of last stream, he is book smart. Not street smart, but book smart. And like, we already got the street smart tsunami, and we also, so obviously we need a book smart dragonette as well, which just so happens to be Starflight. Gosh, I love this lighting. Gosh, I love the lighting on the cover. Like, holy heck, it's not just gorgeous artwork. Oof. Wish I could draw like that. Anyway, chapter 7. Others. What Fate Speaker had said didn't sink in until Starflight was actually standing in the cave a short flight from the fortress, facing 4 unfamiliar and unfriendly faces: red, green, brown, and white gold. They have a skywing, Starflight thought, and a sandwing who looks like a real sandwing. He hadn't met many sandwings in his life, but this one's scowl and restless hostility made her look like the opposite of Sunny. The alternate dragonettes of destiny, Marozia growled, scanning them with a displeased expression.
Who is that?
Said the emerald green Seawing, squinting at Starflight. Looks like her, but is he going to be annoying like her? He jerked his head at Fate Speaker.
This is Starflight. Starflight, these are my friends.
Fate Speaker said, blithely ignoring him. The Skywing snorted, and the Sandwing rolled her eyes.
Over there is Flame, the Skywing, obviously. The fat Mudwing is Ogre. The Sandwing with the sour expression is Viper, and the shrimpy Seawing is Squid.
Did you get in trouble? Squid asked Marozia. I told her she'd get in trouble if she left the cave. I hope you thumped her.
Where have you been?
Viper demanded at the same time, jabbing her poisonous tail toward Marozia.
We've been here for a whole day and a half, and no one has checked on us or fed us anything but what appears to be leftovers from a meal 3 months ago.
Most of which he threw up, Flame said darkly, pointing at Ogre. It was awful, Ogre said. Probably food poisoning. You're lucky I'm still alive. Quite lucky, agreed Flame, since I was extremely tempted to kill him.
That's why it smells so bad in here,
Fate Speaker offered.
Can we move to a different cave? Or, into the fortress!
If there's a whole other set of dragonettes with all the elements that are really in the prophecy, then nobody needs us at all. Starflight's head was spinning. But if the Talons of Peace had these all along, then why treat us the way they did? Why keep us around? And why would the Nightwings send an assassin after us? Pieces started to fall into place in his head. They wanted us dead so they could replace us with these 5. It wouldn't do to have 2 sets of dragonettes running around claiming destiny. Then he thought about the timing, and a shudder ran through his scales. We had a chance until we angered Blister. Until I angered her. It was after that when they decided to kill us. Because I failed to convince the others to pick her as the queen.
Marozia was watching his face intently, as if he might be listening to the thoughts running through Starlight's mind. So, Deathbringer was coming for us all, Starlight said to him. His primary target was the Rain Wing, said Marozia. Secondary, the Sea Wing. The rest of you are still negotiable. Starlight shook his head. You can't kill Glory and Tsunami. I won't do anything you say if that happens. His talons trembled as if the volcano were rumbling under his feet. He half expected Marozia to slash his throat right then and there. We'll see, said Marozia. He didn't look very worried. Your real problem is that my friends are never going to let you replace me, Fatespeaker said to Marozia. We were raised together. We're loyal to each other. They'll fight back if you try to take me out and put someone else in. Replace her? Viper said alertly. We can do that. Do it, Flame said. I vote yes. Me too, said Ochre. He looks quiet. Quiet would be great. Can I be the one to shove her off the cliff? Squid asked. Fatespeaker gave them all an injured look. Very funny, guys. Starlight got the distinct impression that they weren't joking. Poor Fatespeaker, he thought. She really thinks they're her friends. Do you have annoying visions all the time too? Squid asked Starlight. Starlight shuffled his talons awkwardly, but Marozia cut him off before he had to answer. You may all be replaced, he said, as if the word tasted disagreeable in his mouth. Except for you. He nodded at Flame. The Skywing Dragonet puffed out his chest. Ha! And don't you all forget it! Viper hissed at him. Then why'd you bring us here? She asked Marozia. And when can we go back? Squid asked. Marozia frowned at Squid. Starlight could sense that he found the Sea Wing unusually irritating. He wondered if that meant the Night Wings might change their minds about Tsunami. If they kept her alive, they wouldn't have to deal with this dragon as the alternative. Then again, Tsunami could be pretty unusually irritating too. Too bad it didn't work out more neatly for Marozia, Starlight thought with a twinge of satisfaction. 2 unsuitable Night Wings, 2 annoying Sea Wings, 2 perfectly fine Mud Wings and Sand Wings. He thought Sunny was more than perfectly fine, of course. Who needed a poison's tail when she was funny, smart, and kinder than any other dragon in the world? Gosh, he is so in love. I love it. Oh. If you want to be part of this, what I need to see from all of you, Marozia growled, is that you can take orders, work together, and do as you're told. Take orders and do as you're told are the same thing, Fatespeaker said to him. He glared at her. That's how important it is. His dark eyes scanned the dragonets in front of him. So, your first test. You, he said to Starlight. All you have to do, if you can, is stay alive. What? Starlight said. The rest of you, said Marozia. Kill him. He flicked his tail at Starlight. The dragonets all stared at him for a long, awful moment. Can we kill her instead? Viper asked, pointing at Fatespeaker. Ooh, yes, I volunteer, said Flame. No! Marozia nearly shouted. What are you waiting for? That was an order. I said kill him. He's serious, Starlight realized, and then Viper lunged at him, her poisonous tail arcing forward like a scorpion's. On his other side, Ochre's claws slashed at his wing, missing by a hair. And Flame made a fire-is-coming hissing sound Starlight remembered from his terrible training sessions with Crystal. Marozia was probably hoping to see Starlight's fighting skills in action. But Starlight didn't care. He knew better than to rely on those. He he also knew he couldn't do what he normally did, which was freeze and hope nobody noticed him. Starflight ducked under Ogre's wing, shoved Squid into Viper, dodged around Fate Speaker, and leaped out of the cave. Wind whistled through his wings as he sailed down the cliff. The shouts of the dragonets echoed behind him. He knew they'd be right on his tail. He had to find somewhere to hide. End of chapter 7. Okay, these chapters are slightly smaller than the other 5 that I've already read. Which is good, because then we might not be here for 2 hours. But we will be here for at least 2 hours tomorrow, because I'll be playing more Undertale. Just letting you know. Same time though. Early on the weekends. Because it's the weekend and everybody in the US and wherever are free. Doesn't have school or anything to do. Unless, of course, they work. Anywho, chapter 8. Well, this is gonna be great. Yes, I intentionally made that rhyme. Starflight shot down the cliffside and banked toward the ocean. His eyes scanned the ground below him frantically. The good news was, if he understood them right, the dragonets hadn't been on this island very long and probably didn't know it geographically at all. The bad news was, neither did he. Right now, he was on the other side of the volcano from the forest. Here, there were no trees. Everything below him was stark rocks or rivers of glowing lava. Nothing to hide behind. Ahead of him, there was a strip of black sand beach that seemed to circle the island. He remembered Glory saying that the tunnel to the rainforest was in a cave above the black sand beach. A black sand beach. He wondered for a moment if he could find it, but there wasn't time with the dragonets coming after him. He couldn't outfly them for long. Flame, like most skywings, had enormous wings, which made them faster than dragons from any other tribe. He risked a glance over his shoulder and saw the bright colors of 4 dragonets flash through the sky, much closer than he would have liked. Only 4. Fate Speaker was nowhere to be seen. Disobeying orders or sneaking up on me some other way. He didn't have to think about it. He didn't have time to think about it. Starflight twisted into a dive and swooped as close to the ground as he dared. His black scales would make him harder to see against the rocks than if he were up here in the sky. A blast of steam shot out of one of the vents in the ground, and he flapped hastily aside, barely avoiding the heat. From this close, the rocks below looked even more like black dragon scales, but all melted and fused together. Like mine will be if Flame and Viper get their claws on me. The problem was, the dragonets were so close behind him that they'd see everything and anything he did. They'd be able to follow him straight to any hiding place. It was too risky to try to lose him in the water or the clouds. Not with a sea wing and a sky wing among them. He beat his wings faster, trying to think. Use your brain, Starflight. That's all you've got. There was only one place to hide. The fortress. Maybe he'd find a room he could lock himself into, or maybe his father would help him. He swooped into an arc, heading toward it, hoping the dragonets wouldn't cut him off before he reached it. Another blaze of heat brushed his tail, and he twisted to see where the steam had come from this time. To his horror, Flame was only a few wing beats behind him, with fire circling out of his nose. The sight of the skywing propelled Starflight forward, the dragonet beating his wings as hard as he could. But his muscles already ached with exhaustion, and he knew he'd never make it to the fortress before Flame caught up. Then he spotted the caves that lined the lava river below. The Rainwing prisoners. Gloria had described hers in vivid detail. The Skywing prisons. Not prisoners, prisons. Suddenly a blast of thick smoke shot out of a vent in the ground below him. This was a chance he couldn't miss. He dropped behind the smoke, hoping it looked as though he was still aiming for the fortress, and then spiraled tightly down and dove into the first cave he found. A Nightwing god was lying across the entrance. Starlight shot over her head and tumbled onto the stone floor. The god sat up in a hurry, blinking as if she'd been asleep. Farther into the cave, Starlight heard scales shifting as the imprisoned rainwings peeked out of their commotion. Peeked out at the commotion. "Hey!" said the god. "What are you doing here?" She lashed her tail, looking very large all of a sudden, despite the ribs visible through her underscales. Starlight staggered up to his feet again, trying to look calm and ordinary, and like he wasn't being chased. I came to see the Rainwing," Starlight stammered. "The prisoner?" The god frowned suspiciously. "Why?" Um. Starlight flipped through the scrolls in his head as fast as he could. There were a few stories about dragonets in his favorite scroll, Tales of the Nightwings. This couldn't possibly work, but school project? He tried. To his astonishment, the guard completely relaxed. "Ah," she said. "Assignment from Mastermind, right? That weirdo is all about field studies and live observation. Drives my daughter crazy. Alright, go ahead. Just be careful." Starlight bowed gratefully and fled toward the back of the cave. The Rainwing prisoner was chained to the floor and the wall, and his snout was wrapped in an iron band, like the one Strong Wings had put on Orchid. He watched Starlight with a resigned, mournful expression. His scales were gray and dark blue. Starlight wondered if extra chains had been added to all the dragons after Glory and King Kaju escaped. As far as he remembered, Glory had been muzzled but not chained to the wall. He was tempted to tell the sad Rainwing that he would be rescued soon too, but it was dangerous enough that he'd told Orchid. He had no idea whether Rainwings could keep secrets, and if the Nightwings found out that he'd been going around saying reassuring things to their prisoners, well, he couldn't imagine they'd like it very much. A commotion of wings sounded outside. Starlight turned to the back of the cave, which overlooked a huge dark abyss. Glory had said that all the prison caves were connected by this chasm, which was how King Kaju got from one to the other. The last thing Starlight wanted to do was jump into that darkness. Well, no, the very last thing he wanted to do was face Flame and Viper in talon-to-talon combat. So, given those choices, leaping off a cliff into the pitch black was a clear winner. He spread his wings and hopped off the edge, flapping to lower himself down slowly. He kept thinking he was about to crash into something sharp and pointy, but only empty space yawned below him, as if it were trying to suck him down. Finally, several dragon lengths down from the top, he felt a shallow ledge below him and gently rested his talons on it, folding his wings in. Even if someone peered into the chasm, his black scales should keep him well hidden in the shadows. Voices started shouting up above. "Where is he?" That sounded like Flame. "Who are you?" roared the Nightwing God. "Intruders! A Skywing and a Mudwing! They've come back for the rest of the prisoners!" She started banging on some kind of metal alarm gong that reverberated painfully off the rocks around Starlight. He covered his ears, but even over all the noise, he could still hear Flame bellowing, "No, we're supposed to be here!" And Ochre, "We're with Morosier!" "We're trying to kill a Nightwing Dragonet!" Flame shouted. "Did you see where he went?" Well, that was the wrong thing to say, Starlight thought. "They're here to kill our Dragonets!" shrieked the Nightwing God. An almighty crash followed, as if she'd smashed the gong over Flame's head. Starlight hoped she had. Every time he thought of the Skywing's smug face, he thought of how Flame was meant to take Glory's place in the prophecy. Marcia has been trying to have Glory killed since the first moment he saw her, he thought, because she's a Rainwing, and he was afraid she'd figure out the plan and warn her tribe. It's not that he thinks she's weak and useless. He's actually worried about what she might do. as he should be. The crashing and shouting finally ended with sounds of what appeared to be several gods arriving and carting off Flame and Ochre. Starflight hoped Viper and Squid had met a similar fate, maybe searching for him in the fortress, just in case he decided to stay hidden for a while longer. I could try to escape, he thought, now while no one is watching me. I could try to get back to the rainforest to warn Gloria and the others. I have an idea where the tunnel is, but surely it's guarded, and surely they'd stop me, and even more surely, Marcia would be furious, and most likely he'd kill me himself. He closed his eyes, picturing the island, where I could fly away across the ocean. Just pick a direction and go. He already knew he'd never be brave enough to try that. There was no way to know where the nearest land was, or how to find the mainland from here. The island had not been on any of the maps of Pyria he'd ever seen, that was for sure. Starflight wrapped his wings around his talons and rested his head against the rock wall behind him and sighed. Starflight? A voice whispered above him. He froze. The shadows would hide him if he kept still. Starflight, it's me, Fate Speaker, she called softly. He realized her voice wasn't coming from the cave he'd come from. She must be in the cave next to it, also overlooking the abyss. I'm pretty sure you're down here, she said, because that's a crazy smart and crazy brave thing to do, which sounds like you. Ha! Starflight thought crazy brave is the opposite of me. Crazy brave is tsunami. Crazy brave would have been turning around to fight all four dragonettes at once, which is what she would have done. Sitting in a dark hole, waiting for someone else to deal with my problem. She's right about one thing. That does sound like me. Fatespeaker said quietly for a moment, but he could still hear her breathing. Of course, if you're not down here, I sound totally insane right now, she said. There's a rainwing sitting next to me who is giving me the weirdest looks. Hey there, what's happening? Nothing here, just talking into a pit. Carry on looking miserable, don't mind me. Ooh, his ears were a little yellow, she reported. Does that mean amused or terribly annoyed? What do you think? Amused, Starflight thought, if his very limited study of rainwing scales shifting was any guide. I wish I could let you go, sad dragon, she said to the rainwing. I'd need one of those long pointy sticks, though. Starflight, come on, get up here so we can talk about how to help all these sad dragons. I checked a few of the other caves, and there are at least 10 of them here. Can you imagine? 14, according to Kinkajou. Oh, I promise I'm not going to kill you, she added. Is that what you're worried about? I wish I'd say we're going to do amazing things together. That's hardly going to happen if you're dead, right? I don't mind telling Marcia that my prophecies are just as good as his prophecies, and my prophecies say you get to live forever. So there. Starflight smiled into the dark. He would love to be present for that conversation. All right, he said. I'm coming. Together they flew back to the cave, where Viper and Squid were huddled sullenly against the wall, and Marcia was pacing back and forth. Oh, did you lose some dragonettes? Fatespeaker said to him with mock sympathy. Marcia glared at her. It's not funny, Squid hissed. There were about 1,000 Nightwing gods chasing me. Viper rolled her eyes. Try 4, she said. They nearly broke my tail! One of their spears could have taken an eye out, and when I told them I was a dragon out of destiny, they got even more mad. I want to go home. Squid folded his wings and sulked. Plus, I haven't seen any sign of the treasure I was promised. We keep our treasure safe, Marcia rumbled, instead of an ostentatious display like the other tribes. He rubbed his forehead. Perhaps I could have done a better job of warning my tribe that you were there. that you were here. Perhaps you could have, Viper snapped. The council has been told, but apparently the news hasn't spread. It's going to take some explaining to get Flame and Ochre out of the dungeon. Marozia tapped his claws on the rocks and tipped his head at Starlight. A clever way to foil your attackers, whether you intended it or not. It's not what I would have done, but it worked.
Now can we kill Fate Speaker instead?
Viper asked. Sometimes you're just horrible, Fate Speaker said to her. Seems like you had an opportunity to kill him and didn't take it, Marozia said darkly.
Look, destiny is destiny,
Fate Speaker said.
I don't know why you're so worried about who's in the prophecy. You delivered it! Now you can sit back and watch it happen, whether it's me or Starlight. Who cares?
The Nightwings care, said Marozia. The Queen has decreed that I should choose one of you and then kill the others. The other. Fate Speaker opened and closed her mouth a few times.
Really?
She finally said in a small voice. Starlight felt sorry for her. Starting with what Gloria had told him in the rainforest, he'd had a few days to adjust to how different Nightwings were from his expectations. Fate Speaker was getting it all thrown at her at once. Not today, though, said Marozia. For you, I'm moving you to the fortress so I can keep an eye on you. He ended up dumping them in the same dormitory where Starlight had first woken up. Then, to Starlight's relief, Marozia stomped off to the evening council meeting without him.
Are you sure you don't want to take me? Are you sure you don't want to take me?
Fate Speaker asked him. Starlight guessed she was hoping to meet other Nightwings, ones who might give her a better impression of the tribe than Marozia and Mastermind. Very sure. Stay here, Marozia growled at her, and try to speak as little as possible. She watched him leave, her wings drooping.
I was hoping to see the Queen,
she said to Starlight. You heard Mastermind. Nobody sees the Queen. He shook his head. It looked to me like she does everything through her daughter, Greatness. Which was something else Starlight needed more time to think about. He suspected there was more to that story. He wondered if he should try talking to Fate Speaker about the Nightwing's plan. Maybe she'd be willing to help him stop it. He knew she felt sorry for the trapped Rainwings she'd seen, but no matter how sympathetic she was, would she be willing to betray her tribe? There was no time to talk to her anyway. As soon as Marozia was gone, Starlight and Fate Speaker and Viper and Squid were swarmed by the Nightwing Dragonets who lived in the dormitory.
Hello,
Fate Speaker chirped.
Hi, it's so nice to meet you all.
Oh, so you're the other one, Fierce Teeth said, sniffing her. You don't look that great either. Look at all the colors, Mind Reader said, poking Squid's green wings. Shiny! Don't touch me, he whined.
Viper, make them stop!
The Sandwing ignored him. She brandished her tail until the Nightwing Dragonets got out of her way, then stormed to a sleeping spot at the farthest end of the dormitory and curled up on her stone. Exhaustion was starting to overwhelm Starlight. He left Fate Speaker while she was introducing herself to everyone and laid down in the same place where he'd woken up a few hours ago. He missed his friends. He wanted to be eating boar with Clay, arguing with Tsunami, telling Glory all about his strange new discoveries, and warning her about the Nightwings. But mostly he missed Sunny. He missed her warm scales leaning against his, her green eyes watching him while he talked. He wanted to tell her about everything that had happened today. About the strange hunting habits of the Nightwings, that terrible council chamber, the mysterious behavior of the Queen, and what he'd figured out about their secret plan. He wanted to tell her all about his father, and the alternate Dragonets, and his eyes closed, and sleep came for him. End of chapter 8. Yeah, we're definitely not going to be here for 2 hours today. Because we only got 2 chapters left. Damn. I'm just plowing through books at this point. Like, during Easter, I plowed through one of the Legends books in this universe. Don't worry, no spoilers for the current series because there are two Legends books and they happen like at least the first one happened like 2,000 years before this series takes place. So, and I basically plowed through that in 3 days. So good, and there are actually some um things that are cleared up, like in the end, like in one of the, I don't remember which chapter it was, but like one of the 10 last chapters of book 3, the Hidden Kingdom, the Queen Scarlet used this thing called a Dreamwalker, and we get the the origin to those to the 3 Dreamwalkers in existence in Peria. So yeah, I haven't finished the book yet. I really I'm hitting myself mentally because I haven't finished it yet, and it's really good. But yeah, it happens in the night. It takes place in the Kingdom of Night, mostly. 2,000 years prior, which means no volcanic eruption like there's been in this book, destroying the island. Because they were not miserable back then, I can tell you that. Anyhow, chapter 9. Starflight was dreaming, but it wasn't so much a dream as a memory. He was waiting by the cave entrance when Webbs rolled the boulder aside and came in. His wings unfurled, and he leaned forward, trying to see the Guardian's claws. Just one this time, Webb said, untangling a scroll from the net full of fish he was carrying. He tossed it to Starflight, who caught it and turned it reverently between his talons. It was damp around the edges and smelled like fish, but he didn't care. He carried it to the study cave and found Sunny curled in the small beam of sunlight that came through the hole in the roof. His heart skipped a beat as she opened her green eyes and smiled at him. "A new scroll?" she said. "What's this one about?" He sat down next to her and unrolled it carefully. "It's about us." His eyes scanned the text quickly. "Oh, weird. This must have been written recently. All these theories about where we are and who might be part of a prophecy and how it might come true." Sunny sat up and peered over the shoulder, her warm golden scales pressing against his. "Wow, I'd like to know all that myself." "It says there were 17 sea-winged dragonets who hatched on the brightest night, but only 6 of them were from blue eggs. And maybe it's none of them because perhaps there were other sea-wing eggs outside the kingdom of the sea, like children of the towns of peace, it says." "Or an egg that was stolen by the Talons," Sunny pointed out. "Right. It doesn't mention that possibility." Starflight went quiet, reading a little further. "Does it say anything about the sandwing egg?" she asked nervously. The author seems confused about that. Starflight rolled the scroll along, searching for references to sandwings. "He says if a sandwing dragonet hatched on its own in the desert somewhere, it couldn't have survived. So it must be someone's egg, maybe from the Talons of Peace again. That would explain hidden away from the rival queens." "I wish the Guardians would tell us more about where our eggs came from," Sunny said with a sigh. "Maybe I could skip ahead to the part about stopping the war," Starflight said, rolling the scroll through his talons. "Good idea. We're taking suggestions," she joked. "Any war-stopping tips are welcome over here." Starflight paused on the word Skywing. "It says something about how there aren't any Skywings left who were hatched on the brightest night." "What? That's weird. There must be some in the Sky Kingdom. Maybe this also doesn't know what he's talking about. He kept reading, hoping to keep Sunny close to him for as long as possible.
We don't need a skywing anyway, she said. We've got Glory. Isn't it exciting that there are dragons talking about us all over Pyria? She added dreamily. Right now, there are soldiers camped on battlefields talking about how we're the ones who saved them from the endless fighting. We're the dragonettes who want their mothers and fathers to. There are dragonettes who want their mothers and fathers to come home, and they know we're the ones who make it happen. We're going to make so many dragons happy, Starflight.
She shifted her wings and shrugged like she was trying not to sound too dramatic.
I mean, I don't know. It's just nice to know for sure that we're here for a reason and we're going to do something important.
Starflight liked the way Sunny always thought about the way Sunny thought about the prophecy. The idea of that many dragons relying on him always made Starflight feel overwhelmed and anxious. But for Sunny, the prophecy was a promise, not an order. Listening to her talk about it was comforting. Here, he said, possible ways for the dragonettes to fulfill the prophecy. Alright. The first theory is that all the dragonettes are royal daughters, so they'll all become queens of their tribes and stop the war that way. Sunny smothered a giggle.
I can totally see Clay as a Mudwing princess.
He grinned back. It doesn't make sense, though. Without an ice wing, and sorry, I'm a little confused. He grinned back. It doesn't make sense, though, without an ice wing, and it means you'd have to be the next Sandwing Queen.
No, thank you, Sunny said firmly. I'm not Tsunami. I would never want to be queen.
Starflight didn't like the idea either, although the part that bothered him was the thought of Sunny being challenged by vicious Sandwings who wanted to be queen in her place. Alright, let's find the next. He started when suddenly a commotion of running claws sounded from the tunnel. They both looked up as Crystal burst into the room with Webs and Dune right behind her.
Give me that,
Crystal snarled, snatching the scroll out of Starflight's talons. He let out a cry of dismay as it tore between their claws. The Skywing peered at the scroll, then whipped around to glare at Webs.
What were you thinking? Handing them any piece of trash you found on the beach?
The fish trader gave it to me, Webb said defensively. She knows I'm always looking for new scrolls. I didn't have time to read it, but I didn't think it sounded that bad.
Where are the Dragonettes of Destiny? Crystal read off the title. That doesn't sound dangerous to you, filling their heads with questions and ideas. Our heads are already full of questions and ideas, Sunny piped up.
We'll tell you what you need to know about the prophecy. Crystal growled at Sunny and Starflight. You don't need a pile of gossip and rumors and speculation cluttering up your tiny little minds.
Starflight's mind isn't at all tiny or little,
Sunny objected. She glanced at Starflight, and when he didn't say anything, she whispered,
Hey, your line is neither is Sunny's.
Starflight knew she was trying to make him feel better, but he was too nervous to speak. Why were the Guardians so mad? Had he done something wrong? This is not for you, Crystal snapped, waving the scroll. She pointed it at Starflight. You! Battle training now! She turned and stomped out of the cave with the other Guardians close behind her. Sunny ran to the entranceway, then turned back to Starflight with a comically outraged look on her face.
Are you just going to let her do that? She said. She took your scroll. That's so unfair.
Starflight thought so too, but he definitely was not going to argue with Crystal. That's all right, he said, looking down at the grey rocks below his talons. Hopefully Webs will bring a new scroll next week. Next week.
Oh, Starflight, I know you're trying to hide it, but you're so sad now,
Sunny said. She came and sat in front of him, reaching to touch his tail with her own.
Listen, that scroll wasn't going to have all the answers anyway. You know that, right? Nobody knows how the prophecy will unfold. We just have to always do what we think is right, and fate will take us in the right direction.
Maybe, he said, but a map on how to get there would be helpful.
You don't need a map, she said, when you have excellent traveling companions like Clay and Tsunami and Glory, and of course me.
She beamed at him. That's true, he said, feeling again how lucky he was. Of all the caves in all of Pyria, of all the eggs that could have been chosen, somehow his and hers had wound up here, and two dragons who never should have met were together. And that's how we'll always be, he thought. Wait, how long is this chapter? Oh, God. Starflight woke up to find a claw poking his snout. He mumbled. Everything was still and dark in the dormitory. The coals smoldered in the wall niches like the half-closed eyes of slumbering dragons. The skylight looked out onto the night with no stars. The warmth from his dream faded instantly. Sunny was far away, and he had no idea when he'd ever see her again.
I can't sleep,
Fatespeaker whispered in the dark. Her wings rustled as she edged closer to him and poked his shoulder again.
What are you doing?
Said Starflight. Sleeping?
Let's go explore, she said. I want to know more about our tribe, don't you? We can go look around the whole fortress while they're asleep.
He rubbed his eyes and blinked at her. Were we getting in trouble?
Why? She said. Nobody's told us not to. We're Nightwings, aren't we? Isn't this our fortress, too? Let's explore it before someone tells us we can't.
There was a kind of logic to that, although Starflight wasn't sure Morosio would agree with it. But really, she was right. Why should they get in trouble for acting like they belonged here? Besides, it was what Tsunami would do, and wasn't he always thinking he wanted to be more like her? He rolled off. I need to yawn now. Sorry. He rolled off the bed onto the floor next to Fatespeaker, and they padded softly out into the tunnels. She picked a direction apparently at random, and they started to walk the empty walls. The only sound was the tapping of their own claws and the slithering of their tails on the stone. Don't be scared, Starflight told himself, and then told himself again a few more times. You're not doing anything wrong. There aren't any dangers lying in wait for you. You're not being treated like a prisoner. You're Nightwing Dragonette. This is your tribe. This is where you would have grown up. He glanced at the bare walls, not so very different from the cave where he had grown up. This is where you're supposed to be. Oh, I'm supposed to be where Sunny is. I'm supposed to be helping my friends stop the war. He stopped walking for a minute to take a deep breath, then hurried after Fatespeaker. All the torches had been extinguished, so the only light came from the glowing red coals on the walls. Starflight couldn't see any of the moons when he looked out the window. The sky was too hidden by clouds and smoke from the volcano. He knew they wouldn't find much that might be useful unless he was brave enough to open a door sometime. But he was terrified of waking up any sleeping Nightwings. He kept imagining walking straight into Marosio's room and stepping on his tail by accident, and the death or dismemberment or both that would no doubt inevitably follow. He was glad to see that Fatespeaker wasn't going in the direction of his father's lab. Mastermind was surely asleep was surely sleeping like the rest of the tribe, but Starlight didn't want to risk encountering him or get any closer to the things he'd seen in there. Every once in a while, as they walked, they heard a quiet snore from the rooms where they were passing. But they saw no one awake, no gods anywhere. I guess they're used to not needing gods, Starlight whispered, since no other tribe could find this place. They were always safe from attack. He thought for a minute, and even now that they might be attacked, they only need to post guards at the tunnel.
I'm surprised everyone is asleep, though, Fatespeaker whispered. I always thought being a Nightwing meant you wanted to be awake all night. I mean, that's true of me. I can never wake up in the morning, but once it's dark, I'm full of energy. Does that happen to you? I really thought that was a Nightwing thing. But maybe my friends are right and I'm just weird. She kicked a rock sticking out of a crack in the floor.
Or maybe it is a Nightwing thing, and they're all muddled here because they can't really see the night sky anymore, Starlight said. Maybe you're more of a Nightwing than any of us. She fluttered her wings, looking skeptical. As for me, I lived in a cave with no sky most of my life, so I was on whatever schedule our guardians told us to be. And once we were free, well, it's been a strange few weeks, so it's hard to say, but I do feel more alive when the stars are out. Does that make sense?
It does, she said, smiling at him.
She paused at an intersection, thinking, and then purposely turned right. Are we going somewhere? He asked her.
Did you see that part of the fortress that collapsed? She asked. I want to see what it looks like from the inside.
He stopped, his heart rattling nervously. Wait, he said. It collapsed because it was covered in lava. That can't be safe to explore. She flicked his nose with her tail.
Oh, stop worrying. Mighty Claus told me it happened like 11 years ago. It's just a bunch of rocks now, and he said it's kind of neat looking. I guess it covered the part of the fortress where they used to keep their treasure. So they had to blast tunnels into it so to get to get their treasure out. Tunnels in lava rocks. It'll be awesome. Come on.
She bounded ahead and he followed, more slowly, wishing he'd listened to his original saint betting instincts. Okay.
My nose is starting to itch. I don't like that.
Fatespeaker's sense of direction turned out to be better than her sense about dragons, and before long they found themselves in a part of the fortress where the roof was partly gone. What looked like thick black bubble What looked like thick black bubbles of rock filled the hall ahead of them. Chilly air whistled through the gaps in the walls, battling with the heat from the volcano below their talons.
There!
Fatespeaker whispered, darting up to where the petrified lava met the wall. A tunnel just big enough for a dragon. Oh, sorry! It is like 10:30 p.m. A tunnel just big enough for a dragon had been chiseled and blasted and dug out of the rocks. Without any hesitation, she headed inside. What am I doing? Starlight asked himself. He really desperately wanted to melt into the shadows and stay there waiting for her. But he also felt as though she couldn't go in there alone. And this time there was no Clay or Tsunami or Glory to do the brave thing for him. He was the only dragon Fatespeaker had. Taking a deep breath, he forced himself to step into the small tunnel. Jagged rock pressed in from all sides, scraping his wings and the top of his head. Ow. My nose is really itching. I don't like that. Or maybe only 2 hours. I don't know. The tunnel twisted quickly downward, so they had to dig their claws to avoid sliding. Fatespeaker breathed a small plume of fire, but all it did was illuminate the thick, dark walls that encircled them. The air was hot and stuffy, and Starflight began to wonder if anyone had ever died exploring these tunnels. Suddenly, the tunnel turned directly down and dumped them out into an empty space. Fate Speaker fell first, letting out a shout of surprise. So Starflight had a minute's warning and was able to open his wings as soon as his claws lost their grip on the floor. Still, he tumbled several feet and landed on top of her. Oof! He said. He scrambled away and they both lit up the air with their fire at the same time. The room was small but intact. The lava had crushed the upper floors but left this one preserved. Wow, I cannot read right now. Starflight could see a small hallway outside the door, with more rooms beyond that. He looked up uneasily, thinking about the weight of everything above them. Fate Speaker was already hurrying to the doorway as their fire faded into complete darkness. Mighty Claus said, "The old treasure room is 3 doors down on the left. Come on!"
But isn't it empty? Starflight asked, following her with his front talons outstretched. Are we just going to look at an empty room?
A fascinating empty room, she insisted. It used to be full of treasure. Just imagine! I've never seen any treasure before.
Oh, right. Starflight said. The Tons of Peace wouldn't have any, I guess. Unless some dragons brought it with them when they left their tribes.
If anyone did, they keep it hidden, she said.
He felt her tail flick against his snout accidentally as they both felt their way along the walls.
You didn't have treasure in your hiding on the mountain place, did you?
No, but we've been to the Sky Kingdom and the Kingdom of the Sea, Starflight said, and I saw enough treasure there to know that having lots of treasure doesn't make you a good queen or a happy tribe.
I thought Queen Coral was a good queen,
Fate Speaker said, sounding surprised. Well, keep in mind she wrote a lot of the scrolls you've probably read about her, Starflight said, but she is not terrible. She's better than Queen Scarlet, that's for sure. Or Blister. He shuddered, remembering the Sandwing dragon, who had been so disgusted with him.
I bet the Sandwings would be happier if they could find the treasure that scavenger stole, though.
Fate Speaker said, Maybe, Starflight said. There were some really famous pieces of treasure in there, including stuff that was rumored to be Animus touched.
Animus touched?
Fate Speaker stopped and breathed fire again. They were standing under a tall archway with 2 black metal doors, one of which was propped open just enough for a dragonette to slip through. Animus touch means an object that's been magicked by an animus dragon. Starflight explained in the helpful teacher voice he sometimes used with his friends. So the object is left with some kind of power, like a necklace that makes you invisible or a stone that can find anyone you're looking for. Or a statue that'll kill any heir to the Seawing throne it can get its claws on. It's sort of an archaic term, because supposedly there aren't any animus dragons anymore, but that's clearly not true. There's at least one among the Sea Wings, and there must have been one not long ago among the Night Wings.
Really?
Fate Speaker pushed lightly on the metal door, and it groaned open another inch. He realized he didn't know how much he knew about the Nightwing Island. Yes, there's a tunnel from here to the rainforest, and one from the rainforest to the Kingdom of Sand, which must have been made by an animus dragon, he said. I guess I can't be sure how long ago it was, but none of the Rainwings knew about them. Isn't that how you got here?
She shook her head. We flew across the ocean. It was so long and so boring. I swear I nearly fell asleep and ended up in the sea a couple of times.
He perked up, full of geographical questions, but she was already squeezing into the room and making ooh noises. He squashed himself through the door behind her and saw, in the plume of the fire she sent out, a couple of wooden sticks on the floor.
He picked one up and lit it so they could look around more easily. But when he lifted it up, the first thing they both saw were the shriveled corpses of 2 dead dragons. Yikes! End of chapter 9. 1 chapter to go. Okay, 2 dead dragons. What kind of dragons are they? What tribe are they from? Hot dang, that was a long chapter. Damn! That was a really long chapter. Like, let's see how many. Hi. You. So, 13 pages. Usually there are no more than 10. So, that was a longer chapter than usual. Okay, we got 1 chapter left. I'm just gonna check how many pages there are. 2, yeah, 6. Oh dear. T. 11. Well, 10 and a half. Chapter 10. Starlight clapped his talons over Fatespeaker's mouth mid-shriek. "You'll bring the mountain down on top of us," he whispered, and she snapped her mouth shut. He glanced down at the 2 midnight black bodies. "Don't worry, these 2 have been dead a long time," he added, "probably since the volcano erupted." When he released her, she whispered, "How did they die?" Starlight lifted the torch again and peered a little closer, although he really didn't want to. A spear lay beside one of the Nightwings, but it was an ordinary spear, not the creepy hooked and pronged kind all the gods carried now. Neither of them wore armor either. "Suffocation, I bet," he answered. "Or starvation. Or heat, although dragons can withstand a fair amount of heat. My guess is they were guarding the treasure when the eruption happened, and they were trapped here. Nobody could come find them until the lava cooled enough to make the tunnel and crawl through, and by then it was too late." Fatespeaker shook herself from horns to tails. "How incredibly awful!" I am going to yawn. Apologies. Starlight turned to look around the room, which, as he'd predicted, was otherwise empty. Bare shelves lined all the walls, reaching up to the ceiling, and large urns stood in the 2 back corners. He could imagine that they had once been filled to the brim with gold and jewels. He caught himself thinking a giant urn full of gold and jewels would be kind of cool to have, which was ridiculous, just his dragon instincts talking. What would he do with that much gold, unless he could get him back to his friends or stop the war? It would be useless to him. Something went ping at the back of his mind, but before he could figure it out, Fatespeaker said, "Maybe we should go." "I think so," Starlight said. "I don't know how much air is down here, but I don't want to find out by running out of it." "Yikes," she said, her eyes widening. "That's all you had to say." She turned and scooted out of the room faster than he'd ever seen her move before. He took a step to follow her, and the torchlight flashed on something small and bright in one of the corpse's talons. Starlight hesitated. A piece of treasure that was left behind? Something they missed, because who would want to search a corpse? Well, not him, not particularly. But he felt as if it was calling for him, as if it had been waiting for him these 11 years, hiding from anyone else who came along until the right dragon arrived. Now you sound like Sunny, with her faith in fate and destiny and science and magic. So, if taking the lost jewel was what she'd want him to do, he braced himself, reached down, and plucked it from the dead god's claws. Rough dead scales scraped against his, and he shuddered so badly he nearly dropped the gemstone, but instead he gripped it harder and jumped back, knocking against the shelves behind him. The claws were left clutching the air, as if hanging on to the memory of treasure would have been enough. Now Starflight felt fairly sick, but when he held up the torch and glanced down, he realized he'd done the right thing. The blue star-shaped sapphire glinted in his talons with a tiny inner spark of its own light. He'd only ever read about these. There were supposedly 3 of them in the world, all lost, all created hundreds of years ago by a sandwing animus dragon. A dream visitor. He closed his claws around it. Dream visitor. I know the origin of the dream visitors, so I know for a fact that the origin of them has actually been lost to the dragons because they don't actually know. So they just guessed that it was created by a sandwing animus dragon, like hundreds of years ago, even though it's kind of 2,000 years ago, by a Nightwing Icewing hybrid. With this, he could see his friends again. Starflight! Fate Speaker called. Coming, he said. He couldn't risk anyone finding the dream visitor and taking it from him. Not even Fate Speaker could know about it. He put it in his mouth, tucked down between his teeth and his scales, and pressed his tongue over it. On the way back to the dormitory, Fate Speaker asked him why he was so quiet, but he shook his head and murmured that he was tired. She shrugged and headed off to her own bed once they were back inside. Starflight pulled out the rough blanket he'd been given and arranged it so he could huddle underneath it. The heavy brown fabric caught on his horns and smelled like smoke, but it would keep him hidden from any eyes that might still be awake. He cupped the dream visitor in his talons and stared at it, trying to remember if he had read anything about how they worked. Perhaps I just think of the dragon whose dreams I want to visit? Surely Sunny would be asleep right now in the middle of the night. If you remembered right, he should be able to step into whatever she was already dreaming about. And if she were in the deepest level of dream sleep, she'd see him and they could talk to each other. But if her sleep was shallow or uneasy, he might be able to see in, but she wouldn't know he was really there. And if she were awake, it wouldn't work at all, of course. He closed his eyes and pictured Sunny, her laugh that made everyone else laugh too. Her flares of temper that vanished as quickly as they came. Her small claws and fierce protective face. Her scales like rippled sunshine. The way she looked like no other dragon in Imperia. If she were here, she'd know exactly what to say about his father. She'd tell him what to say, tell the Nightwings about Glory, and how to talk them out of hurting Rainwings forever. But no matter how hard he concentrated, his mind stayed firmly in the Nightwing dormitory instead of finding her dreams. Maybe she was awake. Maybe she was in the rainforest somewhere, looking at the moons and wondering if he was looking at them too. He tried Glory next, then Clay, then Tsunami. Nothing happened. He couldn't reach any of them. Starflight squeezed the dream visitor between his claws, grinding his teeth. This had to work. Unless it wasn't really a dream visitor, but it certainly looked like one. Try a Rainwing. They're always asleep. The first Rainwing who came to mind was Kinkaju, the little dragonette Glory had rescued from the Nightwings. Starflight focused on her enormous dark eyes and quick changing scales. He pressed the dream visitor to his forehead, praying that this would work. And suddenly he was perched on a branch in the rainforest. Starflight took a deep, relieved breath, but he still inhaled the smoke of the dormitory. He could see the rainforest, but he couldn't smell it, unfortunately for him. Kinkaju was curled on a giant leaf beside him, with her eyes closed. There was a bandage of soft leaves and moss wrapped around one of her wings, and piles of red, yellow, and purple fruit. And piles of red and yellow and purple fruits all around her, like offerings to a statue. Her scales were a strangely pale shade of blue in the moonlight, and she breathed shallowly, as if even in her sleep she knew a deeper breath would make something hurt. What happened to you? Starflight wondered aloud, but she didn't wake up. He turned to find another dragon staring right through him. Sorry. He turned to find another dragon staring right through him. For a startled, terrified moment, Starflight thought the dragon could see him, but then he realized she was just watching Kinkajou. She was old, older than any of the guardians or queens he'd met so far, and she had the royal elegance about her that he'd noticed greatness lacking. Starflight turned back to Kinkajou. How could he get inside her dreams? He looked down at the dream visitor and remembered pressing it to his own forehead. Carefully, he leaned over and rested the sapphire between Kinkajou's eyes. The first time he tried, he nearly fell right through her, since he wasn't really there. He couldn't touch her or anything around her. But then, when he tried a second time, holding the dream visitor where he thought it should go, he felt a thrum of energy radiate from Kinkajou through the jewel to him and back again. And then he saw what she saw. In Kinkajou's dreams, she was standing in bright sunlight in a wide green bowl laced with brightly colored flowers, surrounded by thousands of rainwings. More rainwings than there could possibly be. Than there could possibly be. Than there could possibly. Than there could possibly be. There we go. On the whole continent, all of them staring at her with expressions of disdain that Starflight had never seen in real life on any rainwing. Sorry. Nose itchy. Nose real itchy. Glory was there, in the center of the bowl, but this glory was impossibly big and impossibly beautiful, and a crown of orange hibiscus gold chain and rubies sparkled atop her head. That's how Kinkajou sees her, Starflight thought. This glory smiled more, too, at least at Kinkajou. A crown, he thought suddenly. Does that mean Glory won? Is she now queen of the Rainwings, or is this a wishful dream? Kinkajou backed away from the stars of the dragons until she reached the far edge of the ball. Suddenly, she turned and leaped off, spreading her wings. But instead of soaring away through the trees, she fell, plummeting like a coconut toward the ground below. Her wings flapped helplessly, and when she twisted to look at them, giant holes appeared over all her wings, spreading as though acid was eating them away. Starflight watched helplessly from above as the greenery swallowed her up. It's just a dream, he told himself, but his racing heart didn't believe him. Just a dream, nothing you could do. She didn't even see you here. He wouldn't be able to reach her in a dream like this, where her emotions were so strong. It was really strange to be in someone else's nightmare, so different from the ones he had almost every night. His own anxiety dreams usually involved the Nightwing Queen telling him that the dragonettes who weren't telepathic were not welcome in the tribe. The dreamscape around him shuddered, and he suddenly went dark. And then suddenly went dark. She's waking up. Starflight dug his talon into the tree branch below him, even though he couldn't see it now, and he also knew it wasn't really there. Or rather, he wasn't really there. He wanted to hold on to the rainforest as long as he could. He didn't want to go back to the gloomy Nightwing dormitory. Stay awake. Stay asleep, he thought desperately. Please see me. I need to send a message to my friends. Now he could see faint outlines of shapes in the darkness, as if it was very early morning and the sun was rising as far away. In front of him, King Kaji was curled on the leaf again, still asleep but twitching restlessly. A silvery shaft of moonlight lit up the expression of pain on her face. She'd snapped out of the nightmare into a shallow sleep with no dreams. If she was half aware of everything around her without being fully awake. Um, he could be here, but she wouldn't see him. Not now.
Another nightmare?
Said a quiet voice behind him. Starflight whirled around, his heart leaping into his throat.
Sonny!
The Sandwing was just landing on the branch beside the queenly Rainwing. Her golden wings folded in and flipped her tail over her back talons the way she always did. A moment later, a glint of blue scales appeared through the trees as behind Sunny. Tsunami flapping down to land next to her. I think so, said the older Rainwing. I wasn't sure whether to wake her up. How is the queen?
Mad,
Said Sunny.
super mad. I keep telling her there's no way Starflight went to the Nightwings on her own, but she's convinced he betrayed us.
Shock rippled through Starflight's wings. It hadn't occurred to him that his friends would think he'd left them on purpose. The queen, does she mean Glory? Glory thinks I betrayed them? Then he remembered telling the Nightwing Council that the Rainwings were planning to attack, and his scales felt hot with shame. He may have been abducted, but he hadn't done anything to help his friends since he got here. He hadn't tried to escape. He hadn't even argued with Mother Seer or tried to stop the Nightwings. Maybe he really didn't belong in the prophecy. Maybe Fate Speaker was a better dragon to save the world. Starflight, Tsunami snorted. Of all dragons, like he'd ever betray us. Can you actually imagine how it would have happened? First, making a decision, not exactly Starflight's forte, and then actually doing something instead of sitting and waiting for it to happen to him. And not just anything, jumping into a dark hole with angry dragons on the other side. Starflight, are you kidding me? Starflight!
Oh my gosh, stop it! Sunny said. You've been arguing with Glory all day. You don't have to convince me that Starflight would do something like that.
She hopped down to Kinkachu's side, nearly passing right through Starflight. He shivered and leaned toward her. He could almost imagine he felt the warmth of her scales as she went by. You don't think he chose to go to the Night Kingdom? Asked the dragon. Starflight didn't know. Sunny looked up at the two moons that were visible through the canopy, then back down at Kinkachu.
If he went, then I'm sure it was for a good reason. But if he didn't choose to go, then he needs our help, right, Tsunami? Isn't that the important thing? Shouldn't we go get him right now, before something terrible happens to him?
She bent to examine the bandage of Kinkaju's wing. Yes, Starflight thought frantically. Please, hurry! If it were up to me, the four of us would be there right now, tearing that place apart. Tsunami growled. Instead of wasting our time here. Combat training didn't go well? Asked the other dragon. Tsunami lashed her tail so hard she nearly fell off the branch.
General, may I take a nap? General, I need a papaya. General, my claws are tired. General, look, a butterfly. Someone is getting stabbed in the face if you don't shut up.
Sunny smothered a giggle. When does the queen want us to attack? When does the queen want to attack? The older dragon bared her teeth as though she was ready to go right now.
Oh, look!
Sunny interrupted, touching her front talons lightly to Kinkaju's head.
She's waking up.
No! Starflight saw Kinkaju's eyes flutter. He reached out, holding the dream visitor, trying to send her back into dream sleep. But it was too late. With a wrenching sideways jolt, the rainforest and Kinkaju and Tsunami and Sunny was ripped away, and Starflight found himself lying on cold stone once again. The thick canvas lay heavy on his horns, and the dim red light of the coals pulsed beyond it, making his eyes ache. Sunny had been right there, inches from him. So close, and yet she might as well have been one of the moons. He stared down at the dream visitor that glowed faintly in his talons. Seeing them had somehow been even worse than not seeing them. My friends think I betrayed them. Or if they don't, they think it's because I'm too much of a coward to do something like that. He closed his eyes, feeling lonelier than he had ever felt in his life. End of chapter 10. Oh, damn. Oh, poor Starlight! Oh, just because he has anxiety. Oh, I love Starlight. Oh, good night. Yeah, I'm about to end as well. Almost 2 hours. Gosh! Damn. Almost 2 hours again. Well, at least it wasn't 2.5 hours like yesterday. But, yeah. It's a bit as well. What's this? Oh. What's this? What's this? Oh, okay. Oh, it's just about the frame rates. Dropped frames and stuff. Oh well. Yeah. But remember, I'm gonna be playing Undertale tomorrow. So if you wanna join in there. Huh. Anywho, good night. Yeah, this is the necklace I want to give to Bones. So yeah. Anywho, good night everyone.